Exposed, the sinister rules of our haunted Arctic outpost for surviving the terrifying night. Wind howled like a banshee through Raven's End, the forgotten Arctic research station. The temperature plummeted, and an ice-cold darkness crept into every crevice. Just hours ago, Sarah, Mark, and Ethan thought they were diving into an adventure. Now they were plunged into a waking nightmare. The station's peeling walls whispered secrets. They were not alone, and the realization clawed at Sarah's insides like a rabid wolf. The first night, shadows flickered on the walls, twisted shapes dancing as the lantern flickered ominously. Just the wind, Mark chuckled, but his laughter felt hollow as if someone or something was listening. They huddled close, sharing ghost stories that sounded like a pitiful defense against an encroaching dark. The moment the lights went out, panic gripped them. It was sudden and disorienting. The pitch darkness swallowed their laughter whole, leaving behind only their breath. Their own flesh and blood presence felt suddenly vulnerable. What was that? Ethan's voice quivered, glued to his phone, desperately clawing for a signal that betrayed him. The icy silence was more than night, it was a stark warning from something unseen. Just outside, a rustle stirred the air. It was as if the snow held whispers. Hesitant breaths, racing hearts, all hidden under the cloak of night. They awoke to a haunting scene the next morning. Strange messages formed on the frost-laden windows. Help us. Goosebumps raced across Sarah's skin. What does this mean? Her anxious words felt heavy, colliding with Mark's dismissive tones. This was all part of the adventure, he insisted. Yet, beneath the surface, something shifted, tension simmered. Each touch of warmth in their bodies felt colder against the Arctic's embrace. Soon, every morning unraveled new horrors. Footprints traced through the snow leading nowhere, vanishing into the blistering white. It's nothing, Mark assured her as the unease grew, but Sarah could feel it gnawing at them. They were isolated, surrounded by an expanse where silence screamed louder than words. Shadows lurked just outside their vision. She discovered whispers of the last research team, crew members whose voices faded into legend, tales told by shaken locals. Stories of creatures gliding through the dense snow. What were they hiding from? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With dread festering, they became strangers in their own skin. Tense glances spiraled into suspicion. As the sun set sooner each evening, the darkness wrapped tighter around them, an unbearable weight. The radio crackled its last breath, leaving them cut off, utterly alone. Sarah felt an unseen presence, something cold and watchful overseeing their every move. Then, one night, a loud crash outside shattered the fragile calm. Terrified breath hitched in her throat as she reached for the flimsy door handle. Shocked gazes disregarded the flimsy notion of safety. Their family bond twisted into something brittle. Help us echoed from the shadows, haunting, familiar. A voice that sent a chill down Sarah's spine, freezing her in place, facing the door, heart racing, she trembled. They may not be alone in their peril. A soft whisper, breaking the bones of their trust, grew louder. Fear gripped her. What was waiting for them outside? Each second stretched thin, each pulse of hope crushed under the weight of the night's dark promise. What if they opened the door? What awaited them on the other side? The door creaked under Sarah's trembling hand. The sound was deafening in the thick silence, a call to the unknown. Mark's wide eyes flickered between her and the door, the fear of the unseen ripping through him. We shouldn't, Ethan rasped, his voice breaking, frayed at the edges. What if it's them? But who were they? The icy truth stuck in Sarah's throat. The whispers, the messages, the footprints, it all led somewhere dark, somewhere uncharted. Suddenly, the warm glow of the lantern flickered violently, casting erratic shadows that twisted and contorted on the walls. The darkness thickened, and the whispers crescendoed. "Open the door," the voice seemed to slither through the gaps, a chilling blend of sorrow and malice. "Stay back." Mark barked, his courage flickering like the flame. "I'll check it out." He took a step forward, but Ethan grabbed his arm, nails digging in hard. "No. We can't just invite whatever's out there in." The arguments danced in anxiety, tumbling around them thick as the frost. Every part of Sarah screamed at her to bolt, to escape the confining walls and slip into the vastness of dark winter beyond. Yet, a paradox tugged at her heart, an urge to save whoever called for help. But as dread seeped deeper, it turned to ice. "Fine, we'll all go together," she blurted, surprising herself with the resolve. The air grew tight as they eyed each other, weighing trust against terror. With a breath that felt like shards of glass, Sarah turned the handle and pulled the door open. The world outside was an abyss, a swirling mass of snow under a slate-gray sky. The storm raged on, but now, it fractured into a brutal silence, a hunter waiting to strike. The trio stepped outside, boots crunching lethargically over the thick blanket of snow. "Hello?" Sarah called in a wavering tone, her voice swallowed instantly by the wind. No response, just the howling echo of emptiness. Then, an unexpected glint caught her eye. Shapes loomed ahead, distorted by the thickness of the fog. Figures, faintly humanoid, shifted out of focus. Her heart thudded painfully against her ribcage. "This isn't right," Mark said breathlessly, panic clawing back into his voice. "Run!" Ethan shouted, but the command felt buried under a thick weight. They turned to sprint but stumbled instead, the ground beneath them shifting. Searing shadows loomed closer with chaotic motions, as if the night itself were alive, shifting and seething around them. Sarah's breath came in sharp, frozen bursts. "There." She pointed toward the station, the old structure looming like a monolith of safety. The storm wailed, agitating their trepidation, but the urge to flee was strong. They bolted. As they darted through the door, slamming it shut behind them, the whispers surged louder, echoing from the depths of the very walls they thought would keep them safe. "Help us," they cried again, a chorus of despair spiraling within their minds. Mark was panting, eyes wild. "What was that? Did you see them?" Something's out there. We can't stay." Ethan's voice propagated a raw urgency. And Sarah felt it too, an unshakable malevolence, thick and suffocating in the air around them. The flickering light ahead cast long shadows, stretching ominously, and a sudden fear settled in. What if the darkness had already slipped inside? What if the true horror wasn't waiting outside, but right there with them? The lantern dimmed, flickered again, and then went dark, plunging them into maddening blackness. Panic took hold as they clung to each other, their breaths shallow and quick. In the silence, a new sound materialized, a soft scraping. Something was moving closer. "Did you hear that?" Sarah whispered, quaking as the reality of their situation began to suffocate her. And then came a voice, hollow yet familiar, like a shroud of winter chill. "Let us in." What had they unwittingly awakened? The darkness felt alive, an entity wrapping itself around them. Sarah shivered, her skin crawling as if icy fingers brushed against her. The last flickering glow of the lantern had gone out, leaving them exposed to an overwhelming void. "What is happening?" Mark breathed, his voice sounding distant in their dread. Ethan stifled a gasp. We need the lantern." But how could they retrieve it now, without lights to guide them? Panic swelled like a living thing, squeezing tighter around their throats. Shadows seemed to dance about, elongated figures curling in on themselves, teasing them with brief glimpses of vague, twisted faces. They were not alone. The scraping noise crawled closer, slow and deliberate, as if something unseen took pleasure in their fear. "Stay close," Sarah ordered, trying to sound braver than she felt, instinctively moving backward until her back hit the door they had just barred shut. "Wait." Their way to Ethan began but stopped abruptly. The sound of something heavy falling echoed through the oppressive silence. The noise was unmistakable, like a slab of ice crashing onto the ground. Mark blinked into the black. Did it come from outside? The question hung like an unanswerable dare, vibrating with apprehension. Then, just as quickly as it had gone dark, the faintest shimmer returned. A spectral luminescence illuminated the outlines of their surroundings. It was erratic, pulsing like a heartbeat. "What is that?" Sarah whispered, feeling her heart claw at her ribs. "It's not natural," Ethan said while shaking his head, taking a hesitant step forward. The light seemed to beckon. Suddenly, they heard it again. "Let us," in the words wrapped around them like barbed wires, evoking a primal urge to flee, yet the curiosity anchored them in place. The glowing figures formed clearer shapes now, human forms merging from the shadows. Pale faces twisted with pain stared back at them, mouths stretched in a silent scream. "What do you want?" Mark shouted, but his voice came out as a mere quiver. An almost sadistic glee flickered in the eyes of the ghostly figures as they drew closer, energy humming in the charged air. Every instinct told Sarah to run, but she felt frozen, captive in the horror unfolding before her. "Can you help us?" she finally asked, her voice quaking, betraying her fear. One of the figures stepped forward, its outlines sharp and angular, almost like ice. The voice that emerged was a cold whisper cutting through the suffocating air. "You've brought us back, now we need you to join." Ethan took another step back, eyes wide. "No. We're not dead." Panic slashed through his voice. Mark's plea drowned in the chaos in his mind. "What do you mean join? What does that mean? We're not like you." As the figures moved closer, an unbearable chill crept in. The air thickened, squeezing the space in the room until Sarah felt like she couldn't breathe. She glanced at Ethan, who was backing away, horror etched on his face. Mark stumbled, tripping over unseen debris, and in that moment, the silence shattered, the whispers crescendoed, a seismic howl entwined with cries of anguish. "Let us in," echoed maddeningly, their voices an unending chant as the apparition's hands reached toward them, the grasping shadows closed in. It was too late to escape. "Sarah!" Ethan's voice sliced through the din as he yanked her back. But did they even have a choice? Would they join this tormented circle, or would dread consume them whole? And then the flickering returned, a strobe of light revealing the station's very structure pulsating like a living organism, groaning under the weight of ancient secrets. Just then, they realized with agonizing clarity that escaping wasn't the path forward, it was the only path into darkness. What horrifying truths awaited them if they let the night truly take hold? Would there be a choice at all? A low growl echoed from within the darkened corners of the station, sending trembling shivers down their spines. The figures lingered just beyond the light's reach, the intensity in their hollow eyes seeming to pierce through Sarah's soul. She felt the cold grip of fear squeezing her heart as the chant continued. "Let us," in the shadows shuddered and swirled, formless and malicious, closing in, and Sarah's breath came in ragged gasps. We should run," she managed to stammer, but a part of her didn't want to turn away. The glowing figures, although ghastly, fascinated her. Could they be pleading for help? Or did they simply crave company in their endless torment? Mark stood frozen, eyes locked on the lead figure. "Do you feel that?" he whispered, his voice barely above a breath. "It's like they're calling us." "No." Ethan shouted, rage and desperation ricocheting in equal measure. "They're not alive. They're dead. They can't help us." With a sudden lurch, the lead figure thrust its hand forward. The light flickered wildly, revealing its features for the briefest instant. Sarah recoiled, gasping at the sight of face she recognized, twisted in anguish. It was Ms. Reynolds, their history teacher. "Join us," the echo of her voice slithered through the room, syrupy sweet with the lure of an impossible fate. Sarah stumbled back, catching Ethan off guard. "What if we could?" she blurted, fear battling with intrigue. What if they know something?" Ethan shook his head vigorously, eyes wide. "No, don't say that. They want us to become like them. It's a trap." His voice cracked, the tremor clear in his words. the light steadied and flickered again, revealing the station's cracked walls shifting as if alive. The air thickened, suffocating and icy. Sarah realized they were standing at the precipice of something profound yet terrifying, shackled by curiosity and dread. Suddenly, the ground beneath them moaned a deep, growling sigh, dining on their tension. As if triggered by their apprehension, the specters surged forth. The light dimmed just as the darkness felt like it was boiling over, rasping whispers flooding their ears, intensifying like a tide rising. "No, not again!" cried Mark, bolting for the door, every ounce of fear in him screaming for flight. But they had conquered that door with their own hands, there would be no escape through it now. "Mark, come back!" Sarah shouted, grasping for his arm, but she was too late. Another figure surged forward, catching him in its icy grasp. He shrieked, his voice swallowed by the cacophony of despair. "No!" Ethan lunged after him, but another spectre materialized, blocking his path. Veils of darkness swirled around him, dragging him deeper into the pulsating void. "Join us" echoed around them, the voices overpowering all rational thought, pulling at fragments of their sanity. As Sarah's heart plunged into hopelessness, clarity flickered like the dying flame of their lantern. They need us," she whispered to herself as if convinced the shadows might hear her. We need to understand." The moment crashed upon her a harrowing realization. She could feel terror twisting like a knife in her gut. "I'll never give in," she murmured, but the shadows were already closing in, transforming into a swirling tempest that as the specters gripped at her thoughts, she felt tendrils of dread settle into her bones. A voice, familiar yet warped, slithered through her mind. Chu's desperation clawed up her throat as she fought against the darkness, but the pull was agonizing. What truths lay at the bottom of this abyss? And then, the lights vanished completely. The darkness swallowed everything. "Will you accept what you see?" came the hollow whisper, curling around her like smoke. Sarah took a deep breath. "Show me," but the echoing dread begged with chilling insistence, "What will you sacrifice?" In the enveloping blackness, she felt no end in sight, only a gaping void that promised everything and nothing at once. Would the price of understanding their fate be too high to pay? The darkness enveloped Sarah, thick and suffocating like a shroud. Fleeting memories ricocheted in her mind, echoes of laughter from the school cafeteria, the warmth of the sun on her skin, the safety of her home. All that felt distant now, slipping away like sand through her fingers. Here and now, the shadows crept closer, their whispers clawing at her sanity. "Show me," she had said, but to what end? An icy doubt seeped in, chilling her spine. What if this was a point of no return? Suddenly, blinding flashes, like lightning, illuminated the void. Each burst brought fragmented images snapping into view, vibrant yet grotesque. Faces twisted in pain, some familiar, others foreign, moaning silently as if part of a nightmarish play. Ms. Reynolds emerged again, her mouth moving in a silent scream, hands outstretched, pleading. "Sarah!" A voice cried, ripping through the dark, a lifeline. Ethan's voice. "Fight it. We're still here." Ethan. Her heart raced. Was he still alive? Or just another illusion crafted by the shadows? The darkness hissed, tightening around her. "Join us, join him." The dual voices merged, creating a cacophony so vile it was almost tangible. Waves of icy dread washed over her. "No. I want tea." Sarah shouted against the madness. Each defiant word felt like striking the throat of the void. She focused on Ethan's voice, wanting to break free from whatever nightmare they had stumbled into. "Where are you?" "Right here. Stay strong. Remember who you are." As she concentrated on his words, the darkness flickered, revealing a distorted stretch of the station. Mark lay on the floor, entangled in shadows that twisted around him like serpents. Panic surged in Sarah as she strained toward him. "Mark!" she cried out. "Fight them." "Sarah, I can't." His voice was muffled, cracking under the burden of despair. The shadows tightened their grip, drawing him deeper. No, hold on. She felt the terror swallow her, but she couldn't give in. With newfound determination, she forced herself forward, pushing against the void that sought to trap her. In that moment, a flicker of light erupted from within her, a spark ignited by sheer will. She reached into the shadows and grasped Mark's hand. The icy cold scalded her, yet she held firm. We're getting out. Together. With a roar, the darkness surged, pulling back for a heartbeat. In that breath of freedom, Sarah felt a bond tighten amongst them, their connection stronger than the phantoms attempting to sever it. A sharp crack echoed, causing Sarah to glance toward the murky edges of the void. What was that? The whispers faltered for the briefest moment. There was uncertainty, fracture in their deception. Ethan. Come on. She yanked Mark up, adrenaline coursing through her veins. They stumbled but didn't falter. Let go of him. A voice shrieked, the lead spectre reeling in fury. He belongs to us. No. Sarah defied, her breath coming in portentous gasps. We won't be part of your misery. The specters screeched, the noise rising to a deafening crescendo, shaking the very foundation of the station. A blinding flash enveloped them, followed by a heart-stopping silence. Sarah blinked, dazed, and the oppressive weight began to lift. They were still in the station, though barely. But the atmosphere was different now, tinged with a tangible tension as they stood amid crumbling walls that seemed to breathe. Did we escape? Mark panted, eyes wide with terror. We have to keep moving, Ethan urged, scanning the remnants of their surroundings. I can still hear them, they're not gone. Before Sarah could respond, a cold draft swept through the room, awakening shadows that lingered just out of view. Are you ready for what comes next? Their whispers taunted. What lay ahead was still shrouded in uncertainty, but one thing stood clear, the true horror lurked just outside their fragile sanctuary, waiting to reclaim its prey. Would they face it head-on or succumb to the creeping shadows once more? A shattering sound ricocheted off the dilapidated walls, shoving Sarah back to reality. The station, with its decaying beams and shattered glass, felt like a living entity, collapsing in on itself. Panic tightened in her chest, but they had no time to waste. Move! Ethan urged, his voice slicing through the lingering silence. He took a step, his foot crunching glass beneath him. The noise felt like a declaration of war against the shadows creeping toward them. Where do we go? Mark's voice trembled, raw and drenched in fear. The memories of their last moments with the darkness pressed heavily against his brow. Sarah didn't have an answer. The hallways stretched into the abyss, doors creaking open and shut as though beckoning them into their mystery. Back to the main hall. Sarah shouted, instinct kicking in. She had no idea what lay ahead, but they needed to regroup. Together, they charged down the corridor, each step echoing their desperation. The shadows lurked just beyond the flickering light, a menacing whisper ready to consume them again. The main hall lay ahead, but as they reached it, the temperature plunged. An unnatural chill swept through, dancing like fingers brushing against her skin. Sarah shivered, the chemical scent of rust and decay slicing into her nostrils. Just then, a cry pierced the air, a desperate, blood-curdling scream that resonated like a dying echo. It clawed at her gut, the reverberation wrapping around them, and she felt the world tip dangerously. Mark, she gasped, scanning the room for any source of the sound. I didn't scream. Mark protested, eyes wide and intense. I know. Ethan replied, determination weaving through his words. We need to find the source. Sarah's heart raced. What if it was someone else, lost another victim like them? But the dread prickled in her mind. Most had disappeared. Would this be another trap? Then, they saw it, a figure emerging from the shadows, thin and twisted, with dark stains on its clothes. It stepped forward, its face obscured in a shroud of darkness, eyes glowing like dying embers. You shouldn't have come back, it rasped, a voice like gravel on glass. The color drained from Sarah's face. What do you want? Your friend he's part of our domain now. Mark staggered back, the light dimming in his eyes. No, that's not true. His voice wobbled, doubt slipping in like poison, the figure's lips twisted, a ghastly smile breaking across its sunken face. Join us, and all will be revealed. Your pain can end. Ethan moved to block Mark, fists clenched. Get away from him. Each heartbeat throbbed painfully in Sarah's chest. She felt rage swirling inside, mingling with fear. We will not be yours. We are not afraid. The figure paused, the smile fading. Fear is only the beginning, it hissed, stretching its arms as if inviting the darkness to envelop them once more. Suddenly, a loud crash erupted from above, dust raining down as a section of the ceiling crumbled. Sarah ducked, her instincts screaming danger. Run! Now! They darted out of the hall, hearing the whispers escalate into a cacophony of anguish. She felt the shadows licking at her heels, desperate to pull them back. Was it all for naught? As they bolted down another corridor, Sarah caught a glimpse of something glistening on the ground. Blood? No, glittering shards of something more. It was a mirror, shattered but still reflecting the fleeting images of their fear-fueled expressions, a reminder of their tenuous grasp on reality. Hold up! Mark shouted, skidding to a stop, eyes locked on the mirror. We need to look. No. We can't. We need to keep moving. Sarah cried, her heart pounding in her ears, but before she could pull him away, the reflection twisted, revealing a vision of the darkness, pulsing and alive. It was like a heartbeat, their heartbeat, and then she heard it again, the ominous laughter echoing, growing louder. Their reality was bending, the shadows were hungry for more than just despair, they wanted them. Can we fight this? Mark's voice wavered, fear raw in his tone. Not alone, Ethan replied, glancing back the way they came. But together, perhaps. The laughter morphed into a chant, and the shadows lunged. Run! Sarah screamed again. They could lose everything, hope and freedom were slipping away, but with each step, the ground trembled. Did they have what it took to fight what was rising again? Just beyond the next corner, something waited with darkness pooling in every crevice. The end was near, but also a new beginning. Would they stand united or tear apart in the face of the inevitable? They rounded the corner, hearts pounding in sync with the sinister whispers behind them. Sarah turned, just for a moment, and saw the figure still lurking at the threshold of the hall. It remained still, as if savoring the moment, the shadows swirling around it like a cloak made of nightmares. Keep moving. Ethan barked. He knew that one glimpse of the creature could break whatever fragile grip on sanity they had left. Sarah shot ahead, desperation fueling her feet. What if she began, only to be cut off by the freezing wind that suddenly howled down the corridor. It felt alive, a sentient force pressing against their backs, urging them towards, where? The answer eluded her, but they couldn't stop. Mark's breaths came in frantic gasps, his face pale and strained. What's it going to do to us? He choked out, fear twisting his features. Every turn they took felt like a descent into madness. I don't know. Just follow me. Sarah shouted, pushing past her own fear in search of relief from the dread that pressed down on her like a lead weight. They crossed into another corridor, the darkness thickening, wrapping around them like a suffocating blanket. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, barely illuminating the walls. Graffiti from some past residents clawing for attention, a discourse of fear from souls long gone. Just then, a thunderous crash resounded from behind them. The laughter roared back, no longer just whispers but a cacophony of voices, shrill and taunting, echoing their most hidden fears. Ethan! What do we do? Mark yelled, panic lacing his tone. Find something to barricade this path. Ethan responded, eyes darting around. Sarah's heart raced as she considered their options. A room lay up ahead, a door slightly ajar promised sanctuary or a trap. They barreled through the door, slamming it shut behind them and pressing against it, breathless and wild-eyed. Darkness enveloped them, the only light coming from the flickering bulb in the corner, casting erratic shapes on the walls. The sounds outside amplified, thuds and scraping noises punctuated the mounting tension. They listened, straining to hear over their own rapid heartbeats. "Do you think we lost it?" Mark whispered, voice shaking. Ethan frowned, staring at the door as if it could crumple under the weight of what waited outside. "Not likely. It can sense our fear, we can't let it know we're afraid." "Easier said than done." Sarah snapped back, the walls closing in around her. "What if we're trapped?" "Look." Ethan pointed to a small window high above them, blocked by rusted bars. They looked out, but all Sarah could discern was the encroaching darkness beyond the small opening. "Can you reach it?" Ethan asked, gesturing to Mark. Mark hesitated, "It's too high." His voice quivered, shaking with a dread that left them all vulnerable. "Then we have to find another way out," Sarah said, determination rising. "This place can't hold us forever." But before they could come up with a plan, the door rattled violently. A heavy something collided against it. The mocking laughter twisted around them, echoing like a sick melody that burrowed into their skulls. "It's coming in!" Mark screeched, his eyes wide with horror. "No, no. We can't let it in!" Sarah shouted. They all pressed against the door, their bodies straining under the assault from whatever was outside. The laughter intensified, as if it fed off their fear, feeding them a dark promise of despair. "Listen," Ethan's voice cracked as he leaned closer to the door, what if we fight it? If it feeds on our fear, we need to be brave." "Brave?" Mark's voice trembled as he looked into Sarah's eyes. "We have no idea what that thing can do. Right now, that door might not hold," Ethan insisted, determination hardening his features. "If we are going to fight back, we need a plan, and we need it now." Another violent thud struck, terror escalating. "Together!" Sarah barked, summoning every fiber of her being into the command. "On 3 we break free or we die trying." They exchanged glances, a flicker of resolve igniting in each of them. They would either face the unknown or surrender to the encroaching darkness. Now. They all shoved against the door in unison, feeling its weight shift, the malevolent laughter merging into an unsettling growl. What awaited them on the other side would either shatter their spirits or unleash a truth that had been buried far too long. Would they escape into this new darkness together or be consumed? One by one, the door splintered. The door buckled under their collective force, slamming open with a bone-rattling crack. The laughter swelled, a chaotic tide crashing against them, desperate to reclaim what it had momentarily lost. "Run!" Sarah screamed, instinctively darting into the corridor beyond the door. The others followed, feet pounding the floor, echoing like the war drums of doom. Mark glanced over his shoulder, fear etching deep lines into his young face. "What if it gets us?" His breath came in gasps, a sharp mix of cold air and dread. "It won't if we keep going," Ethan shouted, urging them on. The corridor twisted and turned, relentless in its design, sending them spiraling deeper into the unknown. The air grew colder, wrapping around them like icy tendrils. But it wasn't just the temperature that chilled them, it was the pervasive sense of being watched, hunted. As they raced forward, strange symbols appeared on the walls, glowing faintly in the half-light. Shapes like claw marks and ominous faces, some contorted in agony, others twisted into grins of pure malice. Sarah's heart sank deeper. This place, it means to trap us. Suddenly, the lights above flickered more violently, the overhead fluorescent tubes popping like fireworks. One burst in a shower of sparks, plunging them into darkness. Terrified, they halted, breath catching in their throats. "Stay close," Ethan commanded, his voice slicing through the dark. He reached out and grabbed Sarah's arm. "Where do we go now?" Mark whimpered, panic saturating his tone. "I don't know," Sarah replied, the words clawing their way out of her throat. "We need to find a way out, any way out." The laughter returned, louder now, echoing off the walls. It felt as if the shadows themselves were closing in, alive and breathing, feeding off their fear. It swirled and climbed, creeping higher, a tangible force intent on shrouding them in its darkness. "Look!" Ethan pointed towards a faint glow at the end of the hallway. "That way." They sprinted, driven by both hope and terror, and as they approached, the source of the light revealed itself, an old, wooden door, glinting faintly. With a single solid push, they could easily swing it open. But as they neared, a hand shot out from the shadows, gripping Ethan's wrist tightly. A figure emerged, its face obscured by a dirty hood, eyes glimmering like shards of ice. "You shouldn't be here," it whispered, voice croaking like dry leaves. "Let go of him." Sarah screamed. She lunged forward, but a chill swept through her, and she froze, paralyzed by the icy presence radiating from the figure. Mark was wide-eyed with fear, glancing from the figure to Ethan, who struggled against the grip. They want you," the figure murmured, an unsettling calm over its words. "They want to play." "Play? What do you?" Ethan stammered, but the figure's eyes pierced through him, as if peeling back layers of his soul. "The rules are simple. Fear leads to despair. Despair leads to, well, you'll see." Before Ethan could respond, the figure vanished into the murky shadows, leaving only a hollow echo of its warning. "What the hell was that?" Mark gasped, shaking, but Sarah's instincts kicked in. "That way," she shouted, rushing toward the door, the icy dread still clinging to her. They shoved through it, tumbling into a room that smelled of mildew and decay. Old, rusted equipment littered the floor, half buried under dust. In the corner, a dusty map was pinned to the wall, a jagged path scrawled across it, leading into the heart of the very maze they had just escaped. What if that thing was right? Mark whispered, trembling as shadows twisted in the corners of the room, alive and watching. As they pieced together their next move, the lights above flickered again, throwing their faces into stark relief, the shadows around them writhing hungry. "We can't give up now," Sarah urged, but a gnawing doubt seeped into her heart. "We need to find a way out of here. And fast." Before they could settle on a plan, a chilling wail rose from somewhere nearby, echoing through the halls. They froze, hearts hammering in their chests. "What was that?" Mark whispered, terror frozen in his eyes. As the wail faded, they each exchanged glances filled with dread. Whatever hunting them wasn't finished. It was merely toying with them, preparing for its next move, and amid the thickening darkness, they knew one thing for sure: whatever was hunting them wouldn't let them leave without a fight. With a deep inhale, Sarah pointed towards a darkened corridor leading away from the map. "We have to keep moving. Together." As they stepped deeper into the unknown, the shadows danced around them, closing in. What awaited them at the end of the path? A way out or their final doom? They moved cautiously down the corridor, the air thick with an unsettling silence that felt alive. Sarah led the way, her heart racing like a wild drum. The whisper of their footsteps bounced against the walls, echoing as if the very structure of the building mocked their every step. Behind her, Mark clutched Ethan's arm tightly, their eyes darting nervously to the shadows that flickered just beyond the reach of the dim lights. "What if it comes back?" Mark's voice wavered, barely above a whisper, as if giving voice to the fear would somehow summon it. Ethan squeezed Mark's shoulder tightly, forcing a weak smile. "We'll find a way out," he said, but even he could hear the uncertainty in his own words. "Just keep moving." The corridor narrowed further, the walls closing in around them. Flickering lights seemed to taunt them, illuminating vague shapes that danced on the edges of their perception. Each flicker felt like a heartbeat, and all of them were acutely aware of the increasing rhythm of their own. "Stop!" Sarah's words burst forth as she spotted a door to their left, sagging on its hinges. A rusty handle gleamed in the eerie light, promising either salvation or further horror. "We can check there." With a shared look of desperation, they rushed toward the door, half hoping it would lead to salvation and half terrified of what lay beyond. As Sarah reached for the handle, a piercing shriek echoed through the corridor. "Get back!" Ethan shouted, yanking Mark away just as the door swung open, revealing a room packed with strange artifacts, their forms obscured by dust. A metal object clattered to the floor, stirring up the musty air. The shriek faded, replaced by chilling laughter that wrapped around them like barbed wire. What was that? Mark asked, shivering involuntarily. Don't stay here. We have to go. Sarah urged, pushing herself into the dim room. The shadows lurked along the walls, inching closer, and she felt their cold tendrils chasing after her. Inside, the walls were covered with photographs faded and torn. They depicted past occupants of the outpost, their faces twisted in expressions ranging from terror to glee. It was like a history of despair. Each photo felt like a judgment, the eyes staring back with a haunting familiarity. It left an unsettling knot in her stomach. I don't like this, Ethan said, stepping inadvertently on a broken doll lying on the floor. It crunched underfoot, the noise piercing the silence like a gunshot. In that moment, the laughter grew louder, an rhythmic crescendo that seemed to echo from all directions. The shadows seemed to pulsate, gathering around the room, and Sarah felt a powerful urge to throw open the nearest window and jump out. But there were no windows, just more darkness. Suddenly, the ground beneath them trembled, vibrating like a live wire. Mark stumbled, grabbing onto the edge of an ancient desk to steady himself. What is happening? Before anyone could answer, a blinding light erupted in the far corner of the room, momentarily washing away the shadows before plunging them back into even deeper darkness. The laughter faded momentarily, replaced by a thick, oppressive silence that felt heavy on their chests. What do we do? Mark rasped, a quiver in his voice as he looked back and forth at Sarah and Ethan, fear dancing in his wide eyes. We can't stay here. Sarah shouted, backing up against the wall, desperate for an escape. Ethan's gaze shifted to a small metal cabinet bolted to the wall, its door slightly ajar. There. Maybe there's something we can use. He exclaimed, pointing. They rushed toward it, hoping it held something, anything that could help them. But as Sarah yanked it open, a blast of freezing air swept out, and an intangible chill gripped her like a vice. Inside lay a stack of old journals, crumbling and brittle, but something shimmered in the depths. A small key. As she reached for it, a shout shattered the silence. No! Don't touch it! It was the figure from before, now emerging from the shadows, eyes gleaming like twin moons. You don't understand the danger you're inviting. Panic clawed at her insides. Sarah's fingers hovered over the key, torn between dread and the instinct to flee. Run! Ethan shouted, grabbing Mark and dragging him back as Sarah stood frozen, caught between the allure of the key and the warning of the figure. What secrets lay in that cabinet? And worse, what consequences would follow? In that moment, the walls trembled again, and the shrieks returned, louder, more insistent. The shadows surged forward, a living tide of darkness eager to drown them in despair. Sarah! Come on! They called, but the figure stepped forward, its voice echoing as it rasped, You have no idea what lies ahead, but you will soon find out. With a sudden determination, Sarah wrested the key from the cabinet and spun toward her friends, resolve igniting within her. This way! Just then, a shadow slithered past her, a flicker in the corner of her eye. She couldn't ignore it anymore. As they fled, the laughter rose to a deafening pitch, drowning out their thoughts. The corridors stretched endlessly ahead of them, twisting, changing. Where would the key lead them? And could they escape the impending doom that lingered just behind them? The answer, or perhaps the only way to know, awaited beyond the next turn. The shadows chased them fiercely as they bolted down the corridor, their breath coming in quick, ragged bursts. Sarah clutched the key tightly in her palm, the cool metal contrasting violently with her racing heart. Echoes of laughter bounced off the walls, sounding like a twisted symphony of despair. Where do we go? Mark panted, the panic clear in his voice. Towards the light. Sarah declared, pointing ahead. A thin beam flickered in the distance, promising sanctuary. Ethan led the charge, pushing ahead, but the darkness was relentless, clawing at their backs, stealing at their heels. "Faster," he shouted, urgency mixing with raw fear. The temperature dropped sharply, their breath creating clouds of vapor that vanished into the consuming dark. They reached the end of the hallway. An old metal door, old and riveted, stood before them like a fierce guardian. "What if it's just another trap?" Mark asked, his face ghostly pale. "Only one way to find out," Sarah hissed, shoving the key into the lock. The key fit snugly, surprising her. With a twist, the door creaked open, revealing a chamber bathed in a soft glow. Inside, the walls glimmered with shimmering frost, like a magical expanse caught in place. It felt alive, breathing, yet oddly serene. A fragmented reflection flashed in the frost, showing hints of those who had come before, their lost souls trapped in the station's history. "Sarah." Ethan's voice wavered, filled with a shaky awe. "What if the legends are true? Let us focus on getting out." With conviction, she stepped into the room, heart racing. They needed to confront whatever this place would throw at them. Suddenly, the laughter materialized again, harder, louder, echoing in the chamber, wrapping around them like a noose. "You shouldn't have come." The voice was chilling, reverberating like thunder against the walls. "Shut up!" Mark yelled, as if daring the voices to mock them further. They wandered deeper into the room, flickering lights illuminating sections of objects scattered about. There, against the far wall, a large mirror stood, its surface both mesmerizing and ominous, like a portal to another time. "We can't linger," Ethan urged, his instincts urging them on. "Something terrible is about to happen." But Sarah felt drawn to the mirror. "What if it shows us a way out?" she urged, hope battling against their mounting dread. She stepped closer, heart pounding, eyes glued to the glass, prompting the shadows around them to wail and protest, swirling like a tempest. As she reached out, image after image appeared, fragments of lives lost, research teams dissipating into panic, cries for help echoing through time. "We can't become part of this," she whispered, horrified. "Then we need to make a choice," Ethan urged, grabbing her wrist with urgency. "We either confront what's trying to pull us in, or we get the hell out of here." Mark, still shaken, nodded reluctantly. "But how?" "Fight with me," Sarah commanded, adrenaline coursing through her. "We face the darkness together." With a collective breath, they stepped forward, hands clasped together, as if forming a shield against the dark whispers. "We refuse you," Sarah bolstered, as echoes of anger and pain bubbled around them. "You have no power over us." The air crackled with energy. The darkness surged, trying to envelop their light. "Keep believing," Ethan added, eyes fierce. "We're not here to play your game." Suddenly, the mirror exploded with a blinding light, scattering shards of energy as the shadows recoiled. The cacophony of voices faded into anguished wails. Sarah felt warmth radiating from where they stood, a phoenix of hope rising from the ashes of their fear. In that moment of intense brightness, they surged forward with renewed courage and will, pushing through the echoes of despair, marked with resolve. They broke free into the passage beyond, leaving the remnants of fear behind. The door slammed shut, sealing the darkness within, cutting off the echoing laughter that melted into the void behind them. In a heartbeat, the world outside felt different, crisp, alive with clarity. The Arctic expanse beckoned before them, a vast white blanket stretching endlessly, secondary to the warmth developing in their hearts. "Did we make it?" Mark asked, bewildered but hopeful. "I think we did," Sarah replied, relief washing over her. "Together," Ethan said, exhaling sharply, eyes gleaming with a new strength. As they stepped forward, the air turned warmer, suffused with the promise of freedom. They were alive, together, beyond the haunted grasp of the outpost. "This isn't just survival," Sarah whispered softly, glancing back toward the now closed door. "It's a new beginning." With arms slung around each other's shoulders, they moved forward into the infinite whiteness, the shadows behind fading into memory, each step a triumph over what had tried to consume them. Now, they could finally breathe and begin again, you need to subscribe now to stay connected for more exclusive stories to come. Smash that like button now to keep the good vibes rolling and feed the algorithm. Don't hold back, flood the comments with your theories about the ending and share your reactions. This is the moment to show your support. And please, instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second.